Hi, I'm Chia and welcome back to my channel. This video I wanted to film my July reading wrap-up, and this month I read 12 books, all varying from different genres from fantasy to summer romances. I was pretty surprised with how many books I read this month because I did have a lot of stuff going on, but at the same time, every single time that I had a free time, I was reading a book, and I read some really good books, some not so great, some 5 stars that I really loved. So let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of July is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. If you watched my reading vlog, I did read all 3 of the Part of Your World series in that video. So this one was the last one that I read. I started reading that series maybe at the end of June, and this was the last one that I finished, and I finished it within the beginning of the month. And absolutely 5 stars for this whole entire series. But Part of Your Summer, how many times am I going to call this Part of Your Summer? I've called this Part of Your Summer so many times, and it's Just for the Summer. So far, out of the whole entire series, I thought that Just for the Summer was my favorite. Our 2 main characters of this book is Justin and Emma. Justin and Emma have the same predicament going on where after they both break up with someone they were dating, the person ends up finding their soulmate right after they're done dating each other. So Justin and Emma come up with a plan that if they dated each other and broke up, it would cancel out the curse. I absolutely love this one because I love the relationship between Justin and Emma, and Justin was my favorite book boyfriend out of all of them because he is the definition of if he wanted to, he would. He speaks with his actions over his words, and it was the smallest things that he did for her, the stuff that he listened to about her. There's little surveys that he did before and after the date to make sure that she had a good time. I like the exploration between the two because a lot of them have a lot of stuff going on. Emma had a lot of abandonment issues growing up, and the way that they grew individually I absolutely loved. And Abby Jimenez has become one of my favorite romance authors because of the way that she writes her books. So Part of Your World was definitely 5 stars. The next book that I read in the month of July was The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. The Housemaid is Watching is the 3rd book in the Frida McFadden series, The Housemaid, but it basically follows this girl, Millie, who starts off in the first book as a housemaid and ends up having a lot of secrets. In the first book, you find out that she was jailed for committing a murder. There was reasonings behind that murder, and you follow her along through all of 3 stories as her life goes on. This was the 3rd one, and I believe the conclusion of the trilogy. It follows where she is at right now, and I love it. I love this character, Millie, because she's very complex. This book got a 4 stars from me because it was slow in the middle of it. A lot of the suspenseful stuff does happen at the end. It's my lowest rated one out of all 3 of the books, but I think that this was great, and I think it is a great conclusion for her story as well. The next books I read in the month of July, I read the Folk of the Air trilogy, which is Cruel Prince, Wicked King, and Queen of Nothing. This series actually surprised me with how much I fell in love with the characters in the series. The plot is not the strongest that I've ever read. This series follows a girl named Jude who is a human living in the fairy realm. She goes to school with a bunch of fairies, and she was adopted by a fairy lord. Because her mom was married to this fairy lord, they had her older sister, and then her mom ran away to the human world because she didn't like living in the fairy world and she thought how dangerous it was, and she ended up taking her older daughter and ended up marrying somebody else, ended up having Jude and her younger sister, which is her twin sister. But then one day the fairy lord ends up finding out where the mom is living. I don't believe this is a spoiler because it is on the back of the synopsis. So the fairy lord ends up murdering her parents and taking Jude and her sisters to come live over at the fairy world. And for the past 10 years, they've been living in the fairy world. She and her human sister are mercilessly teased by all the other fairy children. And there's a whole entire enemies to lovers thing going on, like true enemies to lovers. There's someone named Cardin who is a fairy prince. And there's so many twists and turns in this series, and I didn't realize that I ended up loving it until I got to the last book and I realized how much I was gonna miss the world. I think the main thing I like about this world is that it's different from all the fairy realms that we're so used to, like the Fey realms in A Court of Thorns and Roses and the Fey realms in Throne of Glass, because I liked how a lot of the characters are a lot more seeing the cruelness of how the fairies are. I liked how the fairies were portrayed in this book, and I really love the world because it was a lot more grittier. I had reservations going into the series because I heard it's sort of like a enemies to lovers bully romance, and I am not a big fan of bully romances. I just don't find myself reaching for those because I really don't agree with the bullying romances, but this was so good. There were so many betrayals in this book, but I loved how everything wrapped up, and I found myself loving the characters so much. So Cruel Prince got 4 stars from me, Wicked King got 4 stars, and the last book I gave 5 stars because I really loved how it ended and how the growth of the characters came about. So yes, I definitely recommend this series. The next book I read was the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I decided to pick up Gild on my Kindle because the whole entire series is available on Kindle Unlimited. And I didn't think about it too much because I just wanted something fun to start reading. So I was looking through Kindle Unlimited one day and I saw Gild on there and saw that the whole entire series was available. So I decided to download the first book. The first book follows a girl named Aaron. If you don't know, the Plated Prisoner series is a retelling of King Midas. If you don't know, King Midas has a gold touch, and then his name is King Tyndall. Before he becomes king, he and Aaron run into each other into a town, and he ends up gold touching her and her whole entire body is covered in gold. Her hair is gold, her face is gold. Literally just think of like an Oscar trophy and that's Aaron. And he keeps her in a gilded cage, and then she's one of the royal saddles, but she's the favored of the king. And royal saddles are basically, you know, the concubines of the king, and she's one of the many of them, but she's the favored one because she's the gold touched one, and he keeps her behind a gilded cage because he doesn't want anybody else touching her. And this follows her journey of self-discovery, and the first book was okay. I gave the book 3 stars because I felt that it wasn't really anything going on. It was basically just an introduction of the characters. But I did read the second book, which is called Glint, and this one follows her journey to after certain things happen in the first book, where there's a long entire journey that she goes through. And the third book I also read was Gleam. The first book, Gild, I gave 3 stars to, 4 stars to Glint, and I gave this 4 stars as well. I really like the characters in these books, and also the world. The world is okay, but I just think that there should be more devotion to certain things more than the others. And also there are a lot of characters that I dislike in this book because of the certain things that they do. And there's a found family trope in here as well, and it follows Aaron through her self-discovery of basically going through a abusive relationship that she has to grow from and understand that she was blinded. She was blinded throughout this whole entire relationship, and it was her growth that she's going through right now. There are 5 books out right now. The last 2 books are the other 2 books that are out are Glow and Gold. I have Glow, I haven't picked up Gold yet, and I think I'm going to start reading it maybe this month if I feel the mood for it. But I might push it off to September because the last book is supposed to be coming out in September called Goldfinch, so I might just put it off then. But yes, highly recommend the series. It's binge worthy for sure. It's not going to be the most life-changing world you're ever going to get into, but if I base my stars on entertainment anyways, so yes, I highly recommend. The next book I read was Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. Daughter of No Worlds is a part of the War of Lost Hearts trilogy, and Carissa Broadbent also wrote the book Serpent Under the Wings of Night, and I love the books that are out for Serpent Under the Wings of Night. It's a highly rated series for me, so I decided to pick up another book of hers because I saw that War of Lost Hearts was also available in Kindle Unlimited, and it follows a girl named Tisana who is a slave. And she spends a lot of the years trying to save money so that she can buy her freedom. And she's been trying to save up for the last few years to buy her freedom back. But unfortunately, the slave owner tries to stop her from buying her freedom back, and then she ends up finding a way to escape. And her whole entire goal is to find a group called the Orders. The Orders are filled with magical people, and there's different races of magical people, and she goes over there after she escapes She wants to get trained a part of their army because there are some people that she left behind who are still slaves, and she wants to go help them out. And she wants to barter with them and ask to be trained, and then they barter with her, saying that there's only one person who can train her as an apprentice named Maxentarius. And Maxentarius is grumpy and doesn't want anything to do with the order because certain things have happened in his past that broke him from wanting to be a part of the orders. After convincing him, Tisana convinces him to train her. It's a journey of her trying to experiment with her magic. I gave this book a 4 stars because I love the world. I do like how unique the magic system is, and the characters. I loved Tisana and Maxentarius, and they also have a sort of small found family because Maxentarius has a best friend also that Tisana gets close to as well. I do like the ending of the book, and I do want to continue on to the trilogy, but I did find some parts boring, especially the training parts, because there is over 100 pages of them training her, which is understandable because it is the first book, but at the same time I didn't like it that point because I did find myself losing interest for a little bit. So yeah, definitely 4 stars, and I will continue with the trilogy. The next book I read in July is Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is a novella between Powerless and Reckless that came out earlier this year. This novella follows a girl named Adena who is friends with Peyton from the first book, and this story coincides with, is happening at the same time as Powerless. And if you read Powerless, you know how this ends, and even though I read this book, I had a hope that it would end differently. Call it Delulu, so I don't know why I thought it would be like ending differently, but despite the fact that I knew what the ending was, it still made me bawl my eyes out. I love the characters in this and the new character that gets introduced into the story called Mac, and I love the small romance that we got from Adena and Mac and the small friendship that we did. I did end up giving this a 5 stars because if you make me fall for characters that you introduce in 200 pages, I will automatically give it 5 stars. So this one for sure I recommend. You don't have to necessarily read this before you read Reckless because I did end up reading Reckless this month, so you don't really need to read that, but I highly recommend if you want to read it. The only thing that I am really annoyed about with this book is that the fact that it's so small compared to what the other book is. Like, whose decision was this? Because this is so small. Like, you couldn't have made it the same size, but yet still. Anyways, before I go off on a rant about this, but yeah, it's hard to fit on a bookshelf and there's like small books like this, and it drives me crazy. The next book I read this month was my highly anticipated read, which was a sequel to Powerless called Reckless. Reckless follows Peyton and Kai. Kai is one of the princes of the kingdom. They do a bunch of like Hunger Games trials in the first book, and this one follows them outside of the castle, and it left off with a cliffhanger. The reason why I love Powerless so much because Lauren Roberts knows how to write a good love story. She wrote really good banter between the characters, and Kai has really good dialogue the whole entire time that is very swoon-worthy, and I love the moments between the two, and the plot was really good in the first book. This one I gave 4 stars to because I found that there are some stuff that gets really repetitive in this book. They do argue a lot. I was close to giving this book a 3 stars, but the banter that I love so much between the 2 main characters still prevalent in this book, so I gave it 4 stars for that. And also we find out a lot about a lot of answers to certain things that we had questions about that were brought on by the end of the first book, so I like that. But I just don't like how repetitive it was. There's literally nothing that happens for the whole entire book until the last 50 pages. I did like the development between the 2 main characters, but other than that, the plot was non-existent. If you want to know my full thoughts about this book, and I do delve into some non-spoiler and spoiler talk in my reading vlog, I'm going to be posting it next week. But yes, 4 stars for this, and I can't wait to see the conclusion to this trilogy. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen in the 3rd book in order for me to completely be happy with it. This one was great because I do love the characters. I do hope that we do get some more plot points in the next book. So yes, 4 stars for this. I highly recommend this series. It's just there are some problems I do have with it, but otherwise it's really good. And the last book I read in the month of July was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I finally read this book after having it on my TBR for 2 months now? Yeah, 2 months. I absolutely love this book. Emily Henry does it again. Funny Story was great. It follows Miles and Daphne. Daphne was set to get married at the beginning of the book. Her fiance ends up going to a bachelor party, and it's not only filled with a bunch of his guy friends, but also a girl best friend he's had since he was a kid, and their families are close. And then the girl ends up confessing her feelings to the fiance, and the fiance comes back from the bachelor party and ends things with Daphne and tells her that she has to move out because the house that they were supposed to live in is under his name, and tells her that she has to move out. The girl that confesses his feelings to her ex-fiance is Miles's girlfriend. So they end up becoming roommates with each other, so it's sort of like a forced proximity. And then they end up coming up with the idea that they should pretend to be dating and post pictures with each other on Instagram. And so they end up convincing their exes that they end up dating. And then I really love this book. The reason why I love this book so much, because Daphne is such a relatable character. I love the fact that she's a librarian. I like the fact that she has a hard time making friends like I do, and it explores her relationship not only between herself but also her mom, and also the relationship between she has her Miles. Miles has a way of being self-deprecating with himself because he did have a bad childhood growing up. He does have a sister who comes to visit them, and I love her personality. Daphne finds ways to make friends that is comfortable for her and goes through her interests rather than forcing herself to fit into other people's lives. During her relationship with her fiance, she found that she sacrificed a lot of herself while in the relationship, but she finds ways to completely take care of herself without having to lose herself in a new relationship, whether it be through friendship, whether it be through romance relationships. I love the character development in this book. Daphne was so relatable. She was literally me in this book because of how much she loved to read books, and how there was a lot of references to other books that she read in this as well, and also how she found ways to find her own self-confidence in this book. So absolutely 5 stars. Emily Henry does it again. Okay, that was my July reading wrap up, and I can't wait to see what other books I read in August. It's been promising so far because there are a lot of books that I picked up that are on my TBR that I posted a few days ago, and that I'm really excited to get to, that I'm reading out of my comfort zone, especially since that it's getting closer to fall now. So there's a lot of books that I do want to read during fall time. I'm slowly gathering a bunch of books that I'm reading for fall right now. So okay, that was my July wrap up, and feel free in the comments to let me know what you read in the month of July, and if you read any of the books that I talked about in this video, let me know what you think of them in the comments, or if I convinced you to put them on your TBR. And thank you again for watching, and until next time, bye!